Hi everyone, Abby here of Realize Learning, and today we're going to talk about the dreaded book report. It's the beginning of the school year, and a lot of elementary and middle school students are expected to put together book reports about summer reading, or they're going to be expected to do them throughout the school year. Book reports are often daunting because students have to not only come up with a list of story elements, characters, setting, plot, but also do a full-blown summary, which can involve a lot of different skills. One of the things that I like to do to sort of make this less intimidating for students is to break it into pieces. So one of the first things I do when we are working on a summary together is I say, okay, let's just pick any 5 big events that occurred in the story. They don't have to be in order. They just have to be 5 really big important things that you think happened. So then what they do is they write those down. They can be in phrases. They don't even have to be full, complete sentences with details. So they list their 5 big events. And if it's maybe a younger student, you could maybe start with 3 big events. It doesn't have to be 5. So once they put those down, what we typically do is then we add in a few details. So if the event is, so I'm giving you an example, a recent summary that we just did on the Warriors book, a couple cats set off from their cave in the book Sun Trail in order to find a new home. So my student wrote, traveling cats leave cave. So when we go back to add details, I can ask that student, okay, so where were those cats headed? You know, who were the particular main characters that left with that group of cats, so that we can kind of get a few extra details in there and even maybe make those complete sentences. So you start with your, 3 to 5 bare bone phrases, and then after you go back in and add in some details piece by piece. Then what I do is, a lot of times to make it a little bit more sensory and interactive, is we actually take those 5 events and we cut that piece of paper and cut up those individual events. And then what I say is, okay, let's arrange these in order. So the student actually has to physically put the events in order. And then what I will do is I'll say, okay, let's look at these first 2 events here. Is there anything really important that happened in between these 2 occurrences? Let's sit down and think. And, it's important to have the book there. If you want, you can flip back in the book. Pictures are especially helpful if you have a book with pictures. But just, get the child to sort of think, what was anything else important that occurred? And then, when they come up with an idea, you can write that down, cut it out, and set it between those 2 events. And then I go to another set of events that they had already written down, and I say, okay, so was there anything really important or a big event that occurred in between these 2 events? And so you go on building a summary like that. That's a really great way to get your child to write a summary. And it's also helpful because a lot of times kids, when they sit down to write a summary and talk about what happened in the book from beginning to end, it's very hard to remember every specific thing that was important that happened. Sometimes sequencing events like that in their mind can be difficult depending on your child. And so just letting them pick any 5 events in any order is really helpful, because they can just pick what first comes to mind and then put those in order later. Because sequencing while you're trying to extract big events is asking the child to do 2 different things at the same time, and it's multitasking. And sometimes it's easier just to break it into one task at a time. The other thing is, it helps children distinguish between what is an important detail and what's a big event. What is a non-important detail and what's a big event? A lot of times children who are in elementary school, or it's their first time summarizing, don't really know what's important, and they might just end up picking out things that stuck out in their mind because it interested them in some way, as opposed to what's a pertinent event that occurred in the story. So this kind of helps it to be more simplified, and it's chunking the task into smaller pieces. So I hope that helps, and I hope everyone can use this to maybe have a little bit more of a stress-free book report experience. Thanks.